Welcome to the latest edition of the Monty Dean Show. Comedy plenty is what we'll be having over the next hour. I've been joined by one of my comedic mentors, a general in the scope of comedy, Mr. Pete Crofts. Pete, hello, how are you?
I'm laughing, Monty. I hope you are having a giggle too, mate.
Oh, yes. With everything that's going on, it's part of my spiritual learning where it just seems everything's a cosmic joke at the moment, in the positive side of things, of course.
Yeah, yes. We live in a humourverse,
Yes.
so we've got to be able to see the cosmic comedy.
Exactly. Yes. I mentioned through like frequency where laughing and joy and light and love is a higher frequency, and there's an endorphin rush and everything else like that. But if you go into fear, it lowers you down. You feel down, and so like
Yeah.
going through the Humourversity with yourself, that's all brought me to where I am today, basically.
Well, the goal is, of course, especially these days with the virus, the idea is not to laugh in other people's face, though.
No, it's physical distancing.
Yes, that's right. The goal is to find your own personal laughing place.
Yes, and I do mention that through my shows, be it the round table or just talking to anybody. If you're feeling down, watch some comedy. Because I did some research for this interview as well, because I know recently you put up your talk from '98 in Singapore.
Oh, yes. I really enjoyed that. We had 6,000 people in Singapore. It was great.
Yes, and it flooding back, like just doing the sessions with everyone. I'm like, the old zone horn, eh? There we go.
Yeah.
And so I could, because I think I met you 2 years after that talk, and you had everything set into stone, basically, and so thank you for that, and thank you for coming on. And I think with the intensity, may we live in interesting times. Comedy would be helping out. So apart from you're awesome, that was the sort of the main reason to come on is let's talk about comedy, because very Australian. She'll be right, mate, and you got to laugh.
Well, that's the reality. The reality is that Australia has always lived in interesting times.
Yes.
Like the old Bushy said, I remember floods one day, droughts the next day, bushfires the next day. The next day, the grass grew so high I couldn't find the sheep anyway. The next day, I had a shotgun to my head and I was about to pull the trigger when I heard a kookaburra laugh. I looked over into the bush and I saw a mob of Aboriginals laughing at me. And all of a sudden, it hit me. I've got to learn to do what they've learned to do. I've got to learn to laugh, mate. I can't take this too seriously. Nature knows better than I do.
Yeah,
and slowly over the last 200 years, that was what I call our big idea rush back in about 10 years before our gold rush. That was our big idea rush where we realised that we didn't think the way the Western world thought. We were starting to think the way the Southern world thought. The Western world has a philosophy of tragedy that man is superior to nature. Us down here in the South know that nature is superior to us.
Yes. Instead of, I don't know when science changed, but it's been recently where instead of let's see how nature works, they've gone a bit psychopathic. It's like, let's control nature, and it's symbiotic. It's more of, and also for people that haven't never been to Australia or not know much about Australia. Oh, me speak baddie. English is not my mother's tongue. Well, she's Australian, so who knows?
That's right. That's right.
The country
you can stuff up okay when you're an Australian, because the best you can ever hope to be is a successful failure.
Exactly.
Because you succeed one day, the next day you fail, the next day you have another go, you rip into it, you give it a burl, you have another go, and you succeed. The next day you fail, the next day you succeed. That's the Australian way, mate. You know,
the trick is
we have an attitude down here of acceptance of the reality of life, whereas in the East they have the reality of suffering, and in the West they have the reality of struggling.
Because to add to that very quickly, you have to learn the life lesson, and that's part of the failure. Is successfully learning to fail, it doesn't mean you fail all the time. It's
No,
like, oh,
of course not.
you learn, oh, okay, I shouldn't do that, and then you try the next day slightly different. And especially with Australia, as I was going to say, the country basically wants to kill you. All the animals can kill you, but the thing is, if you treat them with respect and there's that symbiotic energy, you learn from the land and the nature that it is, and we all can all get along. And there's an element of humor to that.
Yeah, and if we were smart enough to listen to the 60,000 years of our indigenous first people, then we would accept the sacredness of nature a lot earlier and a lot easier. And fortunately, that's starting to happen now. We're starting to listen to the voice of the oldest nation on earth in the youngest country on earth, our indigenous Aboriginal brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's a no-brainer. If you think about it, it's like, well, you know, they had their form of civilization for tens of thousands of years, and it worked for them.
Yeah.
And we've been here for 250 years or less, and we're not getting the bond back.
Yeah. Well, speaking of civilization, when I worked as a young comic up in Sydney, up in the Crofts, I worked with half a mustache.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, and I was known as Half a Mo. I was on the Don Lane show, and Don Lane said to me, "Why the half?" I was sitting next to Johnny O'Keefe and Abigail.
Oh, yeah.
It was a beautiful night, and Don Lane said to me, "Why the half a mustache?" I said, "Well, Don, we're only half civilized. If this mustache became so popular that in 10 years everybody had this style of mustache, 5 years later somebody comes along with the other side as well, everybody would say there's a guy with two mustaches." We're only half civilized, Don, and we're only half sane.
Yeah.
Have you ever stopped to think, Don, that homosexuality is nature's way of preventing overpopulation?
Yeah, I can see that on the whiteboard.
And Don, believe me, I'm homosexual. I have sex at home. No, really, Don. Really, I'm trisexual. I'll try any sex. I'm autosexual. I like to get off in a car. I'm bisexual. I got a bisex, Don.
Now, very quickly,
some of the old lines of Half a Mo 30 years ago.
And they still work as well. Which
thank you, mate.
I use Monty Python's Flying Circus as in a way like technology's been crafted in a certain way. And like it's been narrowed down where certain things have been held back, but socially we really haven't moved forward since the 70s. There seems to be that's why their jokes still work, because we're in the same sort of, like, instead of like watching, I'm trying to pick someone that I don't want to dump on. Well, like we know Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin and you know, they're timeless comics, but there was hundreds of other films being made at the same time, and we're not aware of them.
Now, comedy is like nature. It's very topical. It changes continually, and it evolves. And sometimes it goes back, sometimes it goes forward, and sometimes it expands. And sometimes when it really expands to whereby we all have what I like to call comiciousness.
Oh, nice. I haven't heard that.
Yeah. When we all have comiciousness, we don't need to laugh. All we're doing is smiling at the beauty and the moment of reality.
Yeah.
When we all evolve that comiciousness.
Yes. I look into like people doing channelings and so on and so forth. And what I've seen, most of those higher beings have just a beautiful sense of humor.
Yeah.
It's just that now, even if you're for the audience, if you not a believer of the channeling, even the person, if the person that's channeling is fake, they still have this wealth of knowledge and ideas, and there's that sense of humor there. It's really cool.
Yeah. And of course, we can evolve that sense of humor, which is what we taught at the Humourversity, which is currently what I still do. I run the programs, Humour, Laughter, and Health and Healing programs.
Oh, yes. Well, that is part of healing. Like, of course, there's jokes like laughter is the best medicine. Well, if you break your leg, you may need to see a doctor. But still, then afterwards, it's that life lesson angle. And, you can't laugh about it now, but you can laugh about it eventually.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. But the more you practice in your laughing space, the more you can accept the reality of the moment. And I'm speaking from experience here, because I practice a philosophy of rule number 6. There's no rule number 5. There's no rule number 7. Just rule number 6. And rule number 6 is don't take yourself too seriously, because if you do, you're missing the biggest joke of all, which is yourself. And the idea is to be able to see the humour within that moment, so that you can laugh with yourself, at yourselves, because we are many selves, at ourselves at the same time within that spontaneity of that moment. You know?
Yeah. And I'd like to bring up the concept of positive humor and negative humor as well, because you're obviously talking about when you laugh at yourself, it is from a positive place and you're not degrading anyone or,
Well, what you're doing is you're accepting your foolishness. You're accepting your humanness. You're accepting the reality that I don't know.
Yes.
And you're not fooling yourself that you think you do know. You're accepting the uncertainty of the certainty.
Yeah, like we've known each other since 2000, and I've noticed over those 2 decades where some comedians, they just get really mean and they put down, and we could argue about self-deprecation, but there's an element of that. But it's the whole thing of like, calling someone fat or fat shaming and just ripping into them instead of that's negative humor in that respect.
Well, look, all laughter is important because it releases tension within the people who are laughing.
Yeah.
And if that tension wasn't released, that tension would grow to physical violence. So laughter releases that tension, and people need that. There's 4 basic senses of humour. You've got the philosophical sense of humour, you've got the nonsensical sense of humour. Then you've got the hostile sense of humour, and you've got the sexual sense of humour. The first 2, philosophical and nonsensical, work into your intellectual humour. In other words, you live in your head.
Yeah.
And the sexual and the hostile is your physical feelings. And a lot of people, if you read Freud's book that he wrote in 1902, Jokes and Their Relationship to the Unconscious, laughter releases our frustrations in an acceptable way if it's with people who you can relate to. So it's like that concept. You've got the sarcastic wit, you've got the nitwit, and you've got the clowning wit. Yeah. The sarcastic wit puts people down. The nitwit doesn't know what the hell they're doing, so anything can happen. And the clowning wit can laugh with himself, at himself, in the situation at the time with the people that's relevant. The old saying, horses for courses, jokes for folks. It's the people at the time, in the situation, under the circumstances.
Yeah.
So you have to have the right joke at the right time for the right person. And don't get me wrong, okay? I love some hostile comedians.
Yeah.
You know, and I love truth comics like Lenny Bruce, who my goal was to be Australia's Lenny Bruce. And of course, like Bill Hicks, I love the Bill Hicks type comedy, okay, which attacks the serious attitude of the community. Okay,
yes. Yeah,
I love that, but that's not a sense of humour. That's a sense of truth comedy. Okay, a sense of humour is being able to see yourself in that and laugh at yourself. What I learned from Lenny Bruce, he saved my life. My goal was to be Australia's Lenny Bruce, and I read his autobiography and met his mother when I went to the States in '87.
Oh, nice.
And and also his best mate too, Paul Ryzak. And Lenny had a sense of comedy. And I was working one night on stage, and he pretty much came out of nowhere and he said to me, "Doesn't matter whether the audience is laughing, Pete. Laugh at yourself. Okay? Don't take the audience so seriously that if they're not laughing, you're not laughing." So I learnt that you've got a sense of comedy, which is making people laugh, and you've got a sense of humour, which is being able to laugh with yourself.
Yeah.
So you've got the 2 attitudes. You've got the humour action, and you've got the humour attitude, which is basically what my first book was about, how to use humour in business and life, and explained on the back here, ha-ha skills, developing those ha-ha skills. So when I got that vision from Lenny, I let go of my stand-up comedy and left the Crofts, came down to Melbourne and opened up the Humourversity and started to study. Why the fuck couldn't I laugh at myself?
Yeah.
And then of course, I looked at the history of my culture, and I realised why I couldn't. And now that's why I say 100 times a day, the way an alcoholic says 100 times a day, one day at a time. I say 100 times a day, rule number 6. Rule number 6. No rule number 5. No rule number 7. Just laugh, mate. Take it easy. Accept the beauty of that moment.
Well, that's the thing where the genius of that is when you're laughing, like other certain aspects of humanity, they laugh out of fear or they don't want to deal with it. And where you're coming from is because it is the acceptance of it all and it's positivity. And you're laughing to, you can see the cosmic joke where, some things are completely ridiculous.
Yeah. You can see the beauty in the relationship between man and nature.
Yeah.
The current book that I'm writing is called Funny World. That's the current book that I'm writing, and here's a little bit of it. A funny world is a peaceful world. This is Australia's new story for humanity in the 21st century. It's what I call funnyism. Funnyism accepts that we don't know what's going to happen next, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and why it's going to happen. It's saying, I understand I don't understand, and I'll laugh along with life anyway. In science, if you don't understand something, they give you a name for that. And you put these two together, and understanding something that doesn't make any sense is funnyism. And funnyism is futurism. It's where we all sit down in our funny world and say, it's funny that I don't understand what's going on, why it's going on, where it's going on, but I will let go of my practiced principles, cultural wisdom, and my baggage and bullshit from my past. So with a developed sense of humour, an open mind, body and spirit, a funny, friendly, and fair, empathetic, compassionate conversation can begin on how we can help bring about survival of our species, peace on our planet, and happiness to our global human family. And I'll just wrap that up with this little bit down the bottom here. We've learned from the 19th and 20th century that taking seriousness seriously is insanity. We've also learnt that life, nature, and human nature and the humourverse are too mysterious to take too serious. So Australia's fair go democracy is for people who aren't sure they are right or left or right or wrong. And they see their sense of humour centre to have a fair and open conversation to decide. So we sit in the centre of yes and no, right and wrong, good or bad. We don't have the dogmatic beliefs of the Western world that was passed down to generation to generation to generation. We've got 220 nations here and 400 indigenous nations, and they've all blended together. And basically, we have a sense of humour centre perspective. And the idea now is to evolve that further so we can all sit down and have friendly, open communication and conversations. And how we go about doing that, of course, is taking that great Australian expression, you got to laugh, mate, don't take it too seriously.
Yeah, and I think beautifully done, by the way, because I'm sitting there going, yep. I just wanted to say yes, but not really good for an interview. It's like, but I can see like one challenge, because I'm trying to find the right language, of course, is the old Western ideas are still in society, dare I say, with the leadership in a certain aspect. And but out on the streets in the trenches, that's how people just deal with stuff, and everyone.
Yeah, but what's happening now, Monty? and this is a piece that I'm writing now for an article, comedy has become a very personal expression for the digital youth of today. The comedians you like on social media tell people who you are. The boom in comedy programming, from stand-up comedy tours, comedy festivals, to the YouTube comedy and comedy blogs and comedy podcasts, and comedy TV programs, have become a life expression pursuit like music was to their parents. Comedy is bred into their need to release the fears and frustrations, torments and tensions of the 21st century, full on in your Facebook reality. I'm predicting that the entertainment action aspect of comedy will provide the pleasure push to very quickly evolve into a comedy attitude philosophy. So the digital generation will embrace it to find a life of hope, harmony, and happiness, that a developed sense of humor can evolve. Okay? And basically what I'm saying is our big comedy reality is a consciousness and comedy bridge between a European Western reality tragic world to a Southern comedy reality funny world. This is where the big comedy renaissance begins.
Yes.
So basically what I'm saying is the younger generation, who I have a lot of faith in, need to value, investigate, and to employ and to apply this traditional Australian sense of humour, which is summed up by the Aussie, who was driving very carefully in a combi van, and a copper pulled him up and said, "Don't worry, sir, you didn't break any laws, but why is it that every now and then you pull up, duck around the back of the van and bang on the back door?" The Aussie said, "It's like this, officer. I have 3 tons of budgies in there, and this is only a 2-ton truck. If they all landed at once, they'd break my springs." So this is a leap of thinking that we have evolved down here, down under.
Yeah.
And it's alive in our rhyming slang, and it's alive in our attitude towards one another in the bush. So we have to bring that attitude to the city and understand what we have at the heart of our culture. This way of being able to accept the uncertainty that we live in, that it's certain to be uncertain.
And we're seeing that as well. I'm a hermit, so this whole lockdown thing, or shutdown, sorry, I've got to get the language right. I've been preparing it for years. So like, you have to stay home, don't see people. Like I've got this down. This is quite easy. But what I've seen of comedians working today in Australia, it's across the board. There's no one that's not represented. It's, you could see an Indian comedian or Pakistani. The numbers of female comedians coming out as well. Where,
beautiful.
I like how they say, "Oh, funny women aren't funny," but if you look at major comedians that are huge, i.e., Mike Myers, their wife is funnier than them. It's just they haven't chosen to go on stage. They have to live with a comedian.
That's right. Years ago, and we're not going back that far ago. We go back, say, 50 years ago. Women had to laugh with their hand over their mouth.
Yeah.
Okay? But they couldn't open their mouth and really laugh. It was a male thing.
Yeah.
Okay? Laughter was a male thing. Now, of course, women can laugh with their mouth open. And fortunately, we are so lucky. We have so many funny women in the world today, and also so many funny, a variety of different cultural comedians.
Yes.
Some legendary funny comedians here in this country, of course, and even some beautifully funny Indigenous comedians who I'd like to see many, many more of.
Because that would be in their DNA of survival. They're not in survival mode, but there's an element of surviving the land, which
many years ago, it'd be about 15 years ago, a lady who was doing a history. She was an Indigenous woman, and she's written about it in a very successful book, which I have a copy of. She came down, I rang her up, and she'd spent 12 years studying Indigenous humour.
Ooh.
12 years studying Indigenous humour. And I interviewed her after we had a conversation, and she came down to the Humourversity, and we had a wonderful time. And I said to her, Humour is the mind. Ha! Comedy is the body. Ho!
Yeah.
Laughter is the spirit. He, 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 he. Laughter is a spiritual experience. Humour is a mental perspective. Comedy is a feeling, emotional perspective.
Mm.
And she went, wow, because all the study that she had done, the word comedy and the word laughter and the word humour didn't come up, but the word laughter was everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's their spiritual experience that they have, this laughing. And of course, I interviewed her, and I've got a wonderful interview. I'm putting that at the back of the book that I'm currently writing now on A Funny World.
Mm.
Yeah. So,
I was just going to add, where ho ha he. Here's a comedic idea for you. You could use the do re mi, because you seem to be going up, not in octaves but in notes, because he is a higher is the higher note. Which adds to the frequency.
That's right. And we can do it very easily. You know, we'll have a little exercise here now.
Don't get the horn out. Don't get that bloody horn out.
when I opened the Humourversity in 1974. I started the Humour, Comedy and Laughter League, a non-profit organisation to research, study and promote all aspects of Australian humour.
Yeah.
And one of the books, I'd closed up the shop that night. And that day I'd done an interview on the ABC, and the chap said to me, can you develop a sense of humour? And I said, sure, you can develop a sense of humour. There's many books that have been written on the subject.
Mm.
But up until that time, I'd never seen a book written on the subject. I just said that.
Yeah, fair enough.
And would you believe, half an hour later, I was about to close up, a bloke came in the store. He said, look, I'm leaving Sandringham. I've got a box of books. Would you like the box? He said, you don't have to. You don't have to buy them. They're free. And I said, certainly, I'd love the box. Just put them down over there. He put them down over there. And what I did every night before I went to bed, I used to go through the books and put them on the shelf. Yeah. Well, I opened up the box and this book was on the top.
Just lean it a little bit forward.
Yep.
Laughter and Liberation, Harvey Mindus.
Laughter, Harvey Mindus. And this is the first book ever written on how to go about developing a sense of humour.
When was that published?
And this was 1968.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. And my goal after reading the book was to go and meet Harvey Mindus.
Yes.
To see whether or not he had a true sense of humour.
Yeah.
So I represented Australia at the first International Humour Conference at State University in 1987. Mm-hmm. There were 600 people there from every country in the world, all there for the purpose of studying humour seriously. There's the papers. There's the papers from the conference. And I've got the papers. I've got the papers from all the conferences that have been gone back all the way to the first one in 1972. And the title of my talk was Laughter or Slaughter.
Yeah.
And if you took the S off slaughter, it spells laughter.
Yes.
And if you have that sense of humour taught in the classroom, the way a sense of politics is taught and the way a sense of religion is taught, then the kids are going to come out of school with a common sense of humour, where they can sit down and they can have a decent conversation. And I'm happy to say that Harvey Mindus was a beautiful man. He was a beautiful man.
I have something similar where you got to have fun to have a funeral, because it's the first three letters. Right. Now, obviously, you can't go around saying that at funerals because you may get.
Well, it depends. It depends on whose funeral you go to. In some Aussies, you have to. You know, as we say, or my goal, of course, is to die laughing.
Yes.
Hopefully not just at this moment.
I was about to say, don't laugh now. You get stuck in a loop. It's like, I'm laughing all the time.
We can laugh pretty easy. So we'll try this now. I'm going to go ha, and I want you to go ha back to me. Then I'm going to go ha ha, and I want you to go ha back to me. Ha ha back to me. Okay, on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Ha.
Ha.
Ha ha.
Ha ha.
Ha 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 ha! Ho ho!
Oh, I'm not a hoa.
Try this one. He.
That he one is so.
Now. See, whether your body knows it or not, we're releasing endorphins, our body's natural painkillers.
Yep, I felt that. Yeah.
So we're going through a spirit, and of course, look at all the laughter clubs. We started the first laughter club in 1975 at the Humour Comedy and Laughter League. But now there's 1,000 laughter clubs around the world, mate.
Yeah.
Okay. And my goal was to see a Humourversity in every capital city of the world. Now that might come about, but that'll probably be in the year 10,000 or something along those sorts of lines.
We'll aim for a bit earlier.
It might be a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it'll happen eventually.
Yes.
When people start to take humour seriously, not so seriously that they lose their sense of humour about the sense of humour of it. Because
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, because a lot of people take what they do so seriously that they lose a sense of perspective, and all of a sudden they're living in the past. They're what I call zombie living. In other words, their idea is dead. It's not a new idea in the moment, because the moment brings an opportunity for a new concept, for a new idea.
Yes.
Intellectual property has replaced physical property as we move into the AI age. Ideas are income.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's also a big aspect of one of the books I'm currently writing, which is called Live for a Living, which is something that I've done all my life, where I turn my love of comedy or my need of comedy to release my hostility and sexuality in a socially acceptable way. I was a pretty hostile comic, until I realized that I didn't have a sense of humour, which is the message I got from Lenny. So the idea is, of course, that in another 15 years, in another 20 years, the world's going to be a lot different than it is now in relationship to jobs and in relationship to what people do. And I tend to believe that the word business is going to be replaced by the word liveness.
Yeah.
Where people turn who they are into their living, and they start to live for a living, which is what I've done all my life.
Yeah, you do what you love. Yeah, you do what you love, and then you love what you do.
Yeah, that's right. And the first thing you have to do. That's right. It's a checkbook. It's not a notebook. It's a checkbook. The first thing you have to do is write down your thoughts and your feelings, because they don't exist unless you write them down. And I'll just read this little bit to you, Monty. I'm sure you've heard it. All is one. Everything I am and everything I do is one. I am my product and soul. Every thought I have and every feeling I have has been given to me to earn from first and to learn from second. I see my IC, my intellectual capital. Discover your meaning by reflective thinking. Write down your thoughts and feelings, then turn your meaning into merchandise, turn that merchandise into money, and then turn that money into other ways of expressing your meaning. Find your meaning in life. The one thing that everyone needs to do, whether they're a comic or whether they're a carpenter, is understand who they are, because you are your business and soul as we move into an AI community, which is only 15, 20 years away.
Yes, and it took me a while to deal with the concept of money, because in a way it's been weaponized. However, because we live in an energetic universe, money itself actually wants to help you and to propel you forward. And there's that, like even the barter system, it's exchange, it's an exchange of energy. The thing is, I can't really carry around 4 chickens so I could buy a cow. So they've invented these little talismans.
So money is just another funny story.
Oh yes, definitely.
It's just, and of course the story is changing. It's adapting. And we have a unique story down here in Australia. And the unique story is Australians are the future thinkers who fight with funny, not fear. We don't fight with fear. We fight with funny, okay? Which means it's non-violent, it's cooperative. Yeah. We have a joke together. We develop joking relationships with one another, which if you trust somebody, which is the essence of money. If you trust somebody, money's safe, okay? So funny's safe if you trust somebody.
Yeah.
And of course, if you develop your laugh mates, and the idea, of course, is to develop your laugh mates, to develop people that you can have a laugh with, who you can say what you're feeling and they can say what they're feeling without you getting upset and without them getting upset.
Yes,
You know?
more communication with people. Yeah,
That's what it's about.
Now, hindsight is a superpower. I've said it, and there we are. I have spoken. 15 years ago, I believe, I picked a number. However, you suggested I should do what I'm doing now. And back then, I just balked. It was like, why would I want to run a TV station? And that's basically my my waking ego saying, I don't want to do this. And everyone else is like, you will. And what I find interesting is, very quickly, what I find interesting is if I had like I was a warehouse storeman, the effort, it felt dragging, and I had to sort of like push through mud. What I'm having now is I'm having enthusiastic effort. It doesn't feel like it's just like I'm putting in the work and hey, this is awesome.
Yeah. Well, we've got three things in life that we have to manage. That's basically it, Monty. Three things.
Yeah.
Time. We've got to manage our time.
Yeah.
We've got to manage our money.
Yes.
But most important, we've got to manage our energy.
Yes.
We've got to manage our energy. Now, if we're putting our energy into something that we don't like, that's sucking us dry.
Yeah.
Most people go to work, do jobs they don't like, do hardly any work, and they come home and they're very tired. Why are they tired? Because all their energy is going into something that they don't feel. Whereas if you do what you're here to do, in other words, live your legacy, if you're here to do what you do, you bring the energy in, the energy comes through you and goes out and recharges the energy. And you will find when we gave you the Bill Hicks Award, you did write 100 words on the back page of that, and the last line of that, says, "I will not be the best, but I will be different, and that's enough for me."
Yeah. I don't have to I don't have to be Bill Hicks. I just have to be me.
That's it, and you are, you are. Well done, mate.
Thank you. You saw something back 20 years ago, and I'm here to say I got there the long way around, but it's all part of the journey.
Not really, mate. Not really. A lot of comics really never made it in the old days until they were 60 or 55. Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not. You're still a baby, Monty. You've got your future ahead of you, mate. Okay.
Yeah.
And when's your first book coming out?
Oh, well, I've just started the YouTube channel as a business. And so I'm going to say 12 months.
12 months. Okay. 12 months. So right now, when we finish this and you've got a spare moment, you start looking around for a publisher.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you start your book, then you write 500 words a day. You write 500 words a day, you got your book by the end of the year, and you got your publisher.
Yep.
Okay.
I have a couple of friends who are writers, and they're published books. So I know someone. Wink, wink.
Yeah. Of course you do. Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. I know lovely, about networking. It's very hard it's very hard to be a hermit and network, but it is possible, people. I'm just putting it out there.
What you're doing is the new way, mate. Everyone's doing it online, mate. Live for a living.
Yeah.
That's the future.
I've basically, to start out with, I'm modeling it on the Joe Rogan experience.
Yeah, Joe's great.
Yeah.
A brilliant stand-up comic too.
Yes, I've seen some of his stuff. He's not 100% my cup of tea. However, I can see how he works. I don't feel, I smirk or laugh occasionally, and I can see the ideas, and it's like, that's Joe, and I can see why he's doing arenas.
But my favorite comics are the comics that I don't like.
Ooh, please go on.
Yeah. Because my goal now, because I've learnt, I've learnt this. It's taken me years, rule number 6.
Yep. My
comics now are the comics I don't like. I watch them to understand why I don't like them, to learn about my perspective of reality. I want to understand their perspective of reality, so I have more of an open, cooperative perspective of life. So I watch comedians that I don't like to learn to grow my own personality, to be able to be open to other people with different perspectives.
Yeah, I have a similar thing where not just comedians, but movies or anything else like that.
Yeah, yeah,
I can say to people if I'm doing like a personal review, I didn't like the film, but you may, and it just comes down. There's nothing wrong with it. It's made well. The
yeah,
plot works. Everything else like that.
yeah,
Not my cup
yeah.
of tea. But don't base your entire career on me. If
No,
you watch it
no.
and make your own choice.
Mm, mm.
And it also
So,
that allows the resentment, jealousy, and everything else like that. Why are they doing that? They suck. It's like, who cares? They've found a way of
yeah.
connecting to an audience. You're holding yourself back because you're putting negative energy out and attacking someone who has no idea you exist.
Not only are you holding yourself back, but you're not allowing yourself to get in touch with all the other aspects of yourself. One of the programs that we ran at the Humourversity is the Sense of Humour Self-Actualization program, where we actually get in touch with the many, many aspects of who we are. You see, when you go through life, you have certain experiences.
Yeah.
and an experience that really came home to me was my first day at boarding school. Okay, at St. Patrick's College, Sale. Okay, my first day there, 3 kids conned me into going into the toilet, and then spent an hour and a half trying to stick my head down the toilet.
An hour and a half.
That was an hour and a half. I fought them off, the 3 of them.
Yeah.
Okay, and I got in touch at that time, at 9 years of age, with my shadow self.
Yes.
I got in touch with my killer self. Okay, I got in touch with this fearless being that's alive in me.
Yeah.
That my ancestors had to have to get to where they could have me.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We had to have that to be able to survive. I got in touch with that. And the rest of the days at the boarding school, I spent 3 years there. Not one of those 3 kids came anywhere near me for the next 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. Because
and this aspect of myself that I got in touch with, which is the dark side of myself, the shadow side of myself that we've all got, and we all deny that we've got it.
Oh, yeah.
This is something that we have to get in touch with and use the energy of it in a positive, constructive way, not in a negative, violent way. And what I've learned to do, spending 12 years working the comedy clubs and the Crofts, you can imagine that this aspect of me helped me survive in that type of environment. And there was no comedy clubs in those days, mate.
Yeah.
there was only comedy gangster clubs. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And you did what you were told to do. Otherwise, you were dead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Things would happen. Yeah.
Things were a little bit different. So this aspect of me that I discovered at boarding school allowed me to spend 10 years working in this environment until I saw the Lenny Bruce video, where I realized that I was not learning anything and not growing, and I didn't develop a sense of humor. So these days I have a conversation on a regular basis between my conscious aware self and my sense of humor shadow self.
Yeah.
And now when I have something I need to do and I don't have the energy for it, I use the energy of my dark side to work with me, so we work together to create it. And we're not fighting that energy. The positive energy and the negative energy are working together because we have an open conversation where we talk to one another and tell one another that we love ourselves.
Yes.
And any experience you've had in life, if you've got through that experience in a positive way, that's brought out an aspect of you that wouldn't have come out if you hadn't have had that experience. So you've still got so many aspects of your personality because you haven't had those experiences for that aspect to be discovered. So that's why I say, go out there and take risks. Okay? You don't find yourself in life. You create yourself in life. You are the creator of who you are by allowing yourself to experience the moment.
And to step further from that, it's to remembering who you are. You are creating yourself because you're dealing with the aspects and remembering those parts.
You can't forget it. You can't forget it when you write it down.
Yeah.
So it's all written down. You write it down, Monty. You write it down. Then what you do is you tear each check off with the point or the idea, put it on the table in front of you, and when you've got a spare moment, you look at those different ideas, and then you do what I call constant connectivity. You connect that idea with that idea, and that idea with that idea, and before you know it, you have a new idea.
Yes, yeah.
And then before you know it, see, I don't know if you know it, but your bowels work very similar to the way your mind works.
Ooh.
If you train your bowels, you go to the toilet at a certain time in the morning.
Yep.
Okay? If you train your mind the same way, okay, by throwing things back in your mind, okay, and before you go to sleep at night, you concentrate on those things and you allow your subconscious deep internal mind to work on those ideas as you're asleep. When you wake up in the morning, you pick up your checkbook and you write down the comic consciousness or the comiciousness that the night told you what your thoughts were all about, and you write down fresh ideas because you're using your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind's got no mind of its own, Monty. It only knows what you've put into it.
Yeah.
And you've got stuff in it from your DNA that you haven't been in touch with. So we have to allow a channel for that out, and your checkbook and that process at night allows us to be able to open our comicness up when we're unconscious and then when we're conscious in the morning. So if you train yourself that way, before you know it, you're managing your time, you're managing your money, and you're managing your energy.
Yeah.
You're not waking at night, staying awake and worrying. You're releasing all that worry into creative ideas so that you can live your life peacefully in the morning.
Yes, Carl Jung actually did an experiment of that where he would sit up in bed, have a gold fountain pen in between these two fingers, the middle finger, and he would have his hand on the edge. And as he would fall asleep, the pen would be released and it would land on a tray and wake him up. And he would write down...
Who told you that story?
Most likely you, as well as the biography that I read. So I'm just pointing. I'm just I've got 2 points of reference, and so for the audience, when the pen would land, he would wake him up, and he would write down the first idea that it would come to mind.
Into his mind.
Yeah. Now, because he's forcing the issue, it's slightly different from what Pete's saying, where you can teach yourself and you allow the subconscious to compute, and you have 8 hours to go. Oh, here's the idea. He only found out, he only created 4 new ideas, which is still impressive.
Yeah, very impressive. And of course, I put a lot of my beliefs in the shadow from Carl Jung, and also from Harvey Mindus and a variety of other different, especially this guy here. I don't know if you can see the title of that.
It's going to focus Handbook of Humour and Psychotherapy.
Therapy, yeah. I got that at the 6th International Humour Conference. And Dr. William Fry is the man who's done all the research on laughter. And why laughter is such a liberating force.
Yes.
We had so much fun together because we related on that. We related on that deep level.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Imagine, Well, it just like from a spiritual perspective, it's fascinating. I think this has just been I'm having a one-on-one with all this audience. That's basically what we're having here, Pete, because you're just reinforcing everything that's been taught and everything else I've discovered outside of the Humourversity. Where
it's all one, Monty. It's all one.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, the shadow work.
But don't forget, it's all two too.
Oh, as well, and there may be a 3. Depends where if you
the
squint.
Real 3.
Yeah. Oh,
the
yes.
Will.
Yep. In spiritual terms, it's you do your shadow work where you come to peace with it, and eventually, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, your shadow is actually an ally and a friend.
Yes. And a positive energy that can be used.
Yeah. Because we live in duality at this point in time.
Yeah.
And that's why it's there. Fear itself is just to show you that you're out of sync or out of phase or something like that. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah. And the Western tradition of tragedy, which is religion, comedy is nature.
Yes.
Comedy is nature. Religion is tragedy. And that rigid religion is that tragic perspective that doesn't allow us to be able to do that. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's why I say that Australians fight with funny, not with fear.
Yeah.
Whereas the Western world fights with fear, which is a struggle. Okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas here in Australia, it's an acceptance. And an acceptance in the sense that we were the ones that really evolved the 8-hour day.
Yes. Yeah. You've got a family connection to that, haven't you?
I have a family connection to that. My grandfather was the first secretary of the ACTU in 1947.
Oh,
he was partly responsible for bringing the 40-hour week in.
My friend, I am global. So can you explain what ACTU is? What's the acronym stand for?
The ACTU, the union movement in Melbourne, at the Trade Hall.
Yeah, that's
the Trade Hall in Melbourne.
Yeah. Okay, that'll help my American friends.
Yeah, exactly. And so we started to appreciate that sitting on a veranda is as important as being out there working on a tractor.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because you're sitting on a veranda looking at nature and you're seeing the birds, you're seeing the kangaroos, you're seeing the animals coexist. Okay? And that goes into you. That bush experience vibrates through your being.
Yes.
Okay? So whereby, yes, we have a go, we rip into it, we give it a whirl, and we don't give up. If we do, we're knocked down and we get up and we have another go.
Yeah.
But we don't, if we lose, hopefully we're good sports.
Yeah.
Because a good sport is somebody that does their best, but if they lose, they can laugh and enjoy the fact that they did their best. They don't have to be the best.
Yeah, it's the experience. It's not the outcome in that respect. Yeah.
That's it. And also to understand themselves, to accept themselves, not to go home and sit in the corner. Oh, geez, I could have done better than that. And before you know it, you're so far down in the hole you can't get back up again.
Yeah, and most Australians, it's basically
self-acceptance.
Yeah, you come home, it's like, well, that was an interesting experience. I did this, that was wrong, that was funny. I think I can do better. Instead of that's the positive angle. Instead of like, I didn't do that. Also, the Australian land forces you to sort of have an 8-hour day. It was like, I'm not going out there; it's hot. It's just part of the nature.
Or it's hot, or it's floods, or it's drought, or there's a bushfire.
Yeah, the land makes you pause. Yeah.
Can I read this little bit that I've got in my new book?
Yes.
This is a bit from the book that I call Funny World. How we can all live and laugh together in our funny world by 2080. Mm-hmm. Moving from a tragedy philosophy to a comedy one is nothing more than using our Australian sense of humour, you've got to laugh, to accept and expect the endless comedy contradictions of nature and life. The endless comedy contradictions. Life's a surprise, mate. Comedy's a surprise.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that our grateful Southern philosophy, what we call our big comedy reality, and the attitudes and actions, values and virtues that go with these are our Australians' 21st century intellectual property gold rush. Our early Aussie ancestors learnt to do this, and one of the stories they created was about the unluckiest man in the world. He faced the ravages of the environment, the dictates of the bureaucracy and government, plus the misfortunes of everyday life, where he could either weep or laugh. So our Aussie ancestors first started to use humour as a defence mechanism, which is evident from the story of the unluckiest man in the world. He was so unlucky that if it was raining Paris night spots, he'd get hit on the head with a Woolloomooloo dunny. He was so unlucky that when he brought some bananas and opened them up, they were empty. He was so unlucky that he had his nose zipped off by a circular saw, and he was so unlucky that he had a cross-eyed doctor operated on him and stuck his nose on upside down. He was so unlucky that the day he left hospital, it rained and he drowned.
Yeah.
This is our lucky country story. This is the story of who we are. Okay? Yeah. We accept this. We know this. that nature's got a surprise, as we've got the surprise now. And what is the virus that we've got now? It's a flood, it's a drought, and a bushfire all in one.
Yeah, and it's in the long term, we can change the world for a better, because it is a game changer in that respect.
And hopefully it's bringing us all together, where our mateship mentality is to do whatever we can for whoever we can.
Yeah, and
whether we're in the bush or whether we're in the country, or whether we're in a train or whether we're in a tram.
Yeah, and we saw that globally, sort of, dare I say, rehearsal with the fires over the summer, because
yes, that's right.
The global thing. Now, in my mind, I've had this joke permeating, and I want to tell you because it will make you laugh. I saw someone put up a video. They made a video because everyone's got a camera. So if anyone is inspired to do comedy, go ahead, try. Because you never know what will happen from that. But a man dressed as a banana was walking along the footpath and slipped on a person who was lying in front of him.
So that reversal formula.
Yes.
But the reversal formula.
It's only 7 seconds long, but it is extremely funny because it's reversal, absurd, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, but the slip is longer.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be slipping on a banana skin the rest of your life. That's something that happens every day. I like to tell the story about the lady who took a little girl into town shopping one day. This is knowing the right joke at the right time.
Yeah. And
they're coming back in a taxi through St Kilda, which is the area in Melbourne. And the little girl said, "Mummy, what are all those single girls doing standing on the street corners?" And the mother said, "That's got nothing to do with you." And the cab driver said, "Go on, lady, tell her the truth." He said, "Little girl, they're women of the night. They're prostitutes. They make love for money." And the little girl said, "Is that right, Mummy? And if that is right, what do they do with their babies?" And the mother said, "Oh, they usually grow up to become taxi drivers."
Yes. Appropriateness as well.
So it's the right joke at the right time.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Yeah.
And if we all have our banana skin in our pocket when we go for a walk or when we go out to work in the morning, and every time you slip on it, take it out of your pocket, give it a kiss, and pop it back in your pocket and say, "I'll meet you again very soon."
Yeah, I would say just lean back a little bit and enjoy the ride as well.
Yeah, and that's of course what Bill would say.
Yes,
life's a ride. Mr. Bill Hicks. Life's a ride. Enjoy the ride.
I believe he's on the other side, laughing multiple parts of his body off right now, and Hendrik's still on harp.
Or maybe he's sitting between us, mate, and sharing the jokes with us.
Oh yeah, and the mighty Dave Grant as well. They're taking notes because we're that good.
I love Dave.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's
an incredible man, Dave. A unique man, Dave. I worked with Dave for 4 years, and we had many, many wonderful conversations.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, well, he's called the godfather of Melbourne stand-up comedy for a reason.
Yeah.
It wasn't just what he did on stage. It's just everything else he did where he would help everybody.
That's right. He gave it all to people. Yeah. Whereas at the time, I was trying to make a living from it, and I had to charge people for it. Yeah. But I didn't charge Dave. I gave Dave the Bill Hicks Award and trained him free.
Yeah. And good investment, because this is why we talk about him, because he was. It's been 10 years since he transitioned, as I like to say, and so it's. Let's not be sad that he left. Let's love that he was here.
Yeah, but he'll always be here with me. I've got photographs and.
Yeah. Well,
experience.
I actually I bought his DVD, and because I've seen him live so many times, for me on the DVD, it didn't capture pure Dave. And so I did watch it, and I bought it, and I donated it to you in the Australian Museum of Comedy.
That's right. I recall. Thank you. Thank you, Monty.
You're welcome. Yeah. Now, we've come to the hour, I believe, by looking at
the final hour.
Yes.
So we've only got an hour left, have we?
No. It's just an hour long. So what I'm going to put to you, sir, is we have to have you back, because we've only scratched the surface. Honestly, like for those on YouTube,
next time we come back, you can scratch my back.
Yeah, well, physical distancing, so it'll be a broom handle. But yeah, Pete doesn't collect paper. Everything you can see behind him on YouTube, that's all comedy, isn't it?
Well, I've been collecting Australian humour, comedy and laughter for 60 years.
Yeah.
And we're looking at starting up the Australian Comedy Museum. I've started an organisation called the Australian Institute of Comedy, a non-profit organisation.
Yes.
We've got a board of directors, and there's some beautiful people on our board of directors. And we're looking at starting up our comedy museum, which is going to be a place where the Australian sense of humour and the Australian love of laughter, plus the legends of Australian comedy, can be experienced personally.
Yes.
By our nation and also by visitors that come to our country.
Yeah, and that's that helps with the history of it, because you sort of need to see how many people at 25 know who Graham Kennedy is.
Yeah,
and the time, just the numbers that he did. He was earning 50% of revenue for Channel 9 from one show. So all that type of thing. So is there a website for that?
Yes, the Australian Institute of Comedy.
Yeah, just .com?
Yeah.
Yep. I will hopefully put the link in the description, as well as, with your permission, your talk in Singapore in '98. I'll put those two links in the description as well.
Okay.
So
that'd be good.
Well, it's basically it's a condensed of everything that you taught, and it was just the basics. So it's like, ooh. So as we wind up, how can anyone? Do you have a website yourself at this point in time, or
no, Monty, but I do probably about 10 or 15 a year these days, where I do one-on-one 1 days with anybody who really wants to put their comedy career together, or their speaking career together, or their product development career together, where they come and spend a half day or a full day here with me, and then we have some Skype sessions in between the half day and the full day.
Awesome.
So I do a one-on-one 1 day with people who are ready to move to the next level, and that's from the amateur to the professional.
Yes.
When they respect those three things: time, energy, and money.
Yeah. I'll be definitely getting you back on, because
Thank you.
Once again, there is so much depth, and it's fantastic to talk to you again. I would say 80% of it I can move into the spiritual aspect of what I'm doing as well, and just with the whole virus and stuff, telling people to laugh. And one point we'll end on, I guess, is the thing about comedy is it opens up the mind, and you can find solutions to problems.
Exactly. In other words, catch the comedy as well as don't catch the cholera.
Yes, and also if you're talking to three people and you're trying to figure something out, someone says a joke, and you go, "Well, that's not feasible." However, that half of that makes sense, and then you find a solution to the problem that you have or challenge.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. But if you are talking to people and you do laugh, you turn around that way and laugh that way, so the germs go that way.
Oh yes. You got to think about that. All right, Pete Crofts, thank you very much.
Listen, before you go, mate, a big hug, Monty. Okay,
digital hug.
Big hug, son. Okay, I love you, mate.
Same to you, sir. For those on YouTube, if you like, please press the like button, subscribe, share this around. I think in this quarantine, we've shared great information of how to survive in a better, instead of being survival mode, you have a way of surviving where it doesn't deplete you. Also, Pete, I'd like to say, from the timestamp of recording, I am starting a hour-long comedy show on YouTube with a friend of mine. And because he's the galactic historian psychic, and it's basically so we can break all the tension and just have an hour of making fun of most of this stuff. I'll give you one idea that I've put forward. I've already released this on the internet. We'll expand out. I've written down the check, but the idea is, will you be my quarantine? So there you go.
Very good, mate. I'll have a box full of those.
Oh, yes. Well, I'll definitely be sending you the link when it goes up, so you can watch it at any time you like. All right.
And all the best with it, Monty.
Thank you very much. You'll see. I'm sure you'll critique with love. That was the Monty Dean Show, number something and something. And we'll be back next week with another fantastic person. So enjoy, and remember, vote banana.